Hello, everyone. This is great to have since we can't be together. I love Oos. I started painting Oos in 22 years ago. I remember that because that's when Turin first came to teach here. And she and I both had our first grandchild right at the same time. And we've just gotten to be good friends over the years, especially she had 3 granddaughters and finally had a grandson. I had 3 grandsons and finally had a granddaughter. So I've seen her many times and taken classes from her. Us is an area from the west coast of Norway, just south of Bergen. And Torunn Rotfarsund, her family is just continues on with the line of painting in Us. Her great-great-grandfather, Nils Midthus, was the one who basically developed the Us style in around 1850. And the peak of the Us style was the late 18th century, early 19th century. Us is one of the styles that has stayed pure over the years, where a lot of different styles have changed. Us involves a lot of round flowers, the Us rose, scrolls, geometric shapes, and characteristically the oval leaf. This is the first piece I would like to show you, which is a fantastic piece of painting. This is done by Turin's great-grandfather, Ananias Tvedt. And if you notice the hasp and the metalwork, that was very characteristic in that area of Norway, very decorative. And if you notice the heart shapes cut out, and also the heart shape on the side pieces, and the metalwork was painted in between the holes. You can see the Old English lettering, which again is very typical of Us. You see it encased in a scroll here. If you look underneath, there's a red and couple blue scrolls underneath the main white and yellow scroll. And if you see that leaf coming off the side of the scroll, it's an oval green leaf with vein lines. Also, buildings and churches were often used. And Jennifer, I'm not sure if this is supposed to be Lucerne Ullabol's house. I don't know if you know or...
We don't, I don't know that we know for sure about that, but there is a church on the top of the lid that appears to be the church in Us. The Us church.
Right. Because typically the buildings were an actual place in that area. If you notice at the bottom, there's a yellow and white scroll coming out of a rectangular little piece at the very base. And again, all the little blue scrolls underneath. And the green on the end of the yellow scroll is what they call the Cox Comb. I think it was taken after a rooster is why it's called that. And if you notice too, cross-hatching was used a lot. Underneath the building and between the scrolls, there's cross-hatching and dots. There's also cross-hatching under the scrolls at the top. The large white round flowers, clusters of leaves, small flowers. If you notice those little yellow flowers between the scrolls at the bottom, those have teardrops. And again, the other thing is the trim work. If you notice the blue striping, the yellow line and the white line around all the metalwork, okay? This is the lid, which is a little more worn as was common. And you see the church from that area. If you notice the large flower above the church, it's a flower that is made up of leaves surrounding that flower. Also, the center flower on the sides have leaves all around the outside of that flower. At the top, on the sides, you can see that white oval flower with little teardrops that are coming down to make petals. You see small round clusters of 3 dots, which make up a flower. If you can see some of these, they're not as distinct, but underneath the church, again, a circle of color, a white circle and a red dot, which is considered a bullseye, and teardrops. We can go on. This is one of the sides, and if you see that stem is a slight S stroke, again, the oval of white with colors added underneath to like teardrops, the green to make leaves around that, the line work, that spirally center, the scallops at the top, the blue leaves, and you see how they incorporate the handle as part of the design, okay? This is the opposite side where they put initials. Again, the very slight S for the stem, the white and yellow leaves, the same type of flower, but yet not exactly the same. And clusters or stems of leaves going out to the side, okay? This is the inside, which shows everything was painted, even the box. We can go on. This is a detail inside where the flower, again, looks like red leaves, the Old English lettering surrounded by the blue oval and the green scallops, and all the cross-hatching with little flowers in between. And what I've seen in competition lately is some people are using orange, and a lot of them get that idea from this. It looks orangey, but the thing is, it is cadmium red light, which is a little more of a reddish orange, not a true orange, okay? This is another piece that I just love in the museum, a large locking box. And if you notice the handle on the top, that was very common of boxes and smaller trunks in Oos. Again, the striping on all the edges, the scroll that has the Old English lettering encased in the scroll, the simple round flower with all the blue teardrops and detailing line work, the small leaves coming off the base of it, okay? This is the lid where, again, the geometric, that diamond shape is another piece that is riveted on, and the scroll encases the handle, surrounds the handle. You see the multiple scrolls underneath in a different color and the line work. You see the Cox Comb, the blue, off the ends of the scroll. The large white flowers, top and bottom, are a band of white with 2 different colored teardrops. The flower on the right is a yellow oval with the green strokes coming down from it, little scallops above the top. And I love the flower on the left, which uses the rivet as the center of the flower with just scallops around it. And the round flowers on the white, which is really interesting. If you notice the spiral in the center and it looks like a square underneath, if you see this piece, that is actually metallic gold. And metallic gold was often used as just a trim color in Oos. Again, the double lines around the rectangle, okay? This is one end where you see that slight S, and common is the flower tilting from one corner. This has the clusters of leaves, again, leaves around the flower to sort of make petals. If you notice the red band underneath the striping across the top, there are small blue circles and red ovals to fill in that area, okay? This is the opposite side, which it almost looks a little more like a scroll as the stem. Similar flowers, but yet not exactly the same, okay? This is the back, which in Rosemaling, they often use military figures, which you can tell by the capulets on the shoulders. A simple design with a slight scroll off the edges, the leaves, and another band of red with line work. Okay. This is a tray by Perlisny, and it's a very common piece of wood from Oos area. Sometimes certain pieces of wood were characterized just like bunats and the style of painting from the area. And you can see how he used red on the edges, a line of blue, and then a band of metallic gold outlined in red. And then the center flower, a large flower, and those yellow and white petals around underneath the red are what I call smush or candy corn flowers. You take the brush, load it with yellow, roll the middle with yellow, and then just smush it down. And then the clusters of leaves and the tulip shapes in the blue, the ovals of red with a couple crimson teardrops pulled down and white teardrops on the outside. You see the very thin line with little teardrops, sort of a fern shape of line work. Okay. And I just included this because you can see his signature on the back. And Perlisny always signed his pieces. So there were a lot that were similar, but not done by him. So if you want to know that it's Lisny, you look at the back. Okay. This is one of his plates. And the other thing, he painted with enamels. And this one is true Oos, where some of his plates might have an Oos border, but a Hullingdale flower in the middle. These are a cluster of flowers and leaves. Again, those oval leaves, the Old English lettering. But this is Swedish because he had an order from Marshall Fields to do a number of these. And one interesting fact about these is there were only 4 designs that he painted these plates in. Okay. This is a small little trunk. Again, the handle on the top and the metallic gold trim. Even though this doesn't have an actual hasp, they did a decorative shape down the middle in making it look like a hasp. Again, the outlining, the red and the white, even the feet are detailed with an X and an outline. This one has a cluster of flowers, simple flowers. And if you notice the red, there's little scallops on the outside with dots inside and a little teardrop. Again, in the upper left and upper right corners, that little smush stroke, which is just plopped down. There's some flowers like above the blue flower on the left and the right is just a circle of color with a dot and little dots around it. Some of them very simple, okay? This is the top, which the center has an Oos rose, and there are varied ways of doing that. Again, the leaves and those smush flowers. On the outside bands, it's just a band of red with the little scallops around. Very simple, but again, divided into sections by the metallic gold. Okay. This is one side, which very simple, just a few flowers, very simply done. If you notice above the red flower, the little clusters of stems, sort of like berries, you can see the fern line work coming off of these flowers. Okay. This is the opposite side. They aren't always the same, even though they might have the same balance or same direction, but they don't have to be symmetrical. Okay. And the back, which has the Old English lettering again, every area, even the back of trunks, was painted in us. Okay. And the inside, even though this is small, I believe this is about 10 inches, the inside of the lid, and it has a little box, which also is painted. Okay. This I included because of the blue background. Most common was the white background, and also the black, the blue, and the red. And sometimes you even found a green, although not that common. And this is a small box, but again, how they divided the sections imitated a hasp in the front. Very simple clusters of flowers. Okay. This is another very nice little trunk. Again, the handle on the top. And the sections divided with the metallic gold. And on the front, it's just a very simple blue flower, probably starting with a blue circle and little strokes of dark blue at the top. And, excuse me a minute. And white teardrops that bring out the blue on the underside, simple white circles for flowers. Okay. And the back also, even though it's not as elaborate a design, it has a very slight S stem that's sort of hidden by those leaves, a cluster of 4 leaves, all different shapes. The tulip flowers, simple round flowers, and some of the ferns, okay? This is an end, which again, very simple, with teardrops for a white flower, again, sort of tilted from a corner, okay? And the opposite side, again, from the corner, but yet different flowers, very simple flowers on this. And even the line work on the feet. Okay. This is the inside, again, painted both on the box and the inside of the lid. Here you can really see those oval flowers on the lid. Okay. This is a hortolon and again, with pieces of wood. The tinas from Hortolon had that triangular top and more of a curved handle. Here you notice again the scroll with the lettering encased inside. There's a house on the top, the flowers, and on the left side that almost looks like fruit that's hanging. Okay. This is the back side, though a little more worn, but you can see the geometric shapes they used to encase the lettering again. Lettering was always encased. And it's a nice balance because you have those, the backs are sometimes hard to paint because of that lacing. But here you see those large white flowers off to the sides and it balances very well. Okay. This is a beautiful Tina. This is from Irene Lamont's family. And if you notice the colors, you can see why she paints in those colors. Again, the white scroll encasing the Old English lettering, the Cox Comb in blue underneath the ends of the scrolls, the cross hatching underneath the scroll, those white and blue leaves on the sides with a little flower connecting them, and also the tulip on the sides. And again, the triangles on the top, if you notice, have a different color inside with the cross-hatching, the blue trim and the striping. Again, the handle on top is more rounded, okay? This is the other side, the lettering encased again. And if you notice all the little scrolls underneath and the little scallops off the end on the right side of the scroll. Again, the same type of leaves with a tulip above it. On the left, there's 3 flower shapes, or 3 shapes that make a flower. Off in the center, there's a cluster of small leaves. Okay. This is the lid, which often on Tina's, you saw that scroll that it circled around the handle. This one is very decorative on the base where that Cox Comb in blue comes with the little green scallops around it. If you notice the center of that knob, there's line work that creates a little flower. Again, that 3-petaled flower that comes off of the scroll. On the opposite side, there's 2 long leaves with little scallops in between. The one thing when I look at this, I think it's a little heavy on the left side. If I was painting something like this, I might have made the right end or the top of the scroll a little heavier. Okay. This, I don't know how old this is. It looks very old. It's missing the handle. But again, the rectangular shape in the center, you can see the cadmium red light, which is mixed with white, so it's a lighter color. All the line work, the details, the scallops with teardrops off those leaves. Again, almost like scrolls in the yellow above the leaves. Okay. And the other side, where the date is encased, pretty similar to the front side. And again, the red trims around the edges, and even the lacing is painted red. Okay. This is the lid, which I think is very beautiful. Again, the scroll that went around the handle, the 2 leaf shapes with the petals in between, the circle little flower for a center of those, the large flower with the band of color and the scallops. And if you notice the cross-hatching inside the scroll, and also a line work inside the scroll. And often these scrolls ended with a very large dot at the center. Okay. This is an Us basket. And like I said, with pieces of wood, this is very typical of Us. The basket I've seen in the museum from Telemark has a basket weave on the side, where the Us had the piercing. And if you notice on the bottom side, there's a band of gold around those circles and diamond shapes. There's diamond shapes painted in the corners, outlined. Each side was different. You can see the yellow round flower on the left side. On the other side, the blue rose, which is very simple, and the little white clusters of circles. So very simple, okay? These are the opposite sides. So you can see every side is different. There's a red rose and white teardrop flower on the right side. There's the red round flower on the left side. So, and you notice the different colors, the red band on the bottom, there's a blue edge on the top, okay? And this is the inside. And on the inside, the sides were not painted, just the bottom. And usually it was a stem that went from corner to corner on a tilt, and you see the blue leaves, the red flower. And if you see this actual piece in person, you'll notice those little plop or smush flowers in the crimson on the right and left. And those are still very purpley, and the white is still very white. You see the band is painted and the edges have a red trim. The outside edges on the top have a border design. A lot of times those had a geometric shape in the corner and lettering also, okay? This is an Us chair, the three-legged chair, which again, the white, if you notice the designs go from the bottom of the leg to the top, bearing different flowers across the band in the back, down the center of that leg and back. The front area, the lower front, has a design, again, encased in metallic gold with a red line. And you see the large flower and smaller flowers tapering off to the sides. This one, the center design is very symmetrical. Okay. This is the back, which again in Us, every edge was painted. The back of the band, the back edge of the legs. This one is a little simpler, but I have seen them where even the sides of those edges are painted. Okay. I included this because this is a little Chenya that Turin painted for me. And what is typical is the dragon's head with the teeth and the curled tail. And again, just like Bunad's and Rosemaling, Chenyas varied from area to area. So if I see a piece like this, it needs to be painted in Us. Okay. This is a trunk I painted. Some of you might have recognized it because I did it for a class, but I also did it for my granddaughter. And KJ Groven did the metal work on it. It's only about 22 inches, I believe, across the lid, but I kind of got ideas from it from a trunk that is in Ulla Boll's house in Lucerne, which was a beautiful white trunk. So here I used the clusters of leaves with the S stroke on the front coming into a flower, a rose, the designs on the top and the side, okay? And also the inside, again, the trunk in Lucerne, I got the idea of the oval of flowers with her name in the middle. So again, even on the bottom, the feet painted, every area painted, okay? This is a little mirror that I painted with the colors that Yordis uses more, not as bright. It's the more ochre colors and the Venetian red or red ochre instead of the cadmium red. So I used a cluster of flowers, the rose, a lot of the ferns. Some are just like near the rose on the bottom. There's a yellow band with scallops. So very simple flowers, okay? This is a plate I did, which I included because you have that very simple, more elongated scroll in red, the yellow essing off of it, and the blue almost looks like it comes straight out from the center, which you saw commonly in Us. They aren't as graceful as Telemark is. And a lot of detailing. If you notice around the yellow, or I mean the red scroll, little scallops with diamond shapes. And also this had a very narrow rim. So I used the scallops in a couple colors with the diamond shape and little dots and teardrops to do a border around those. Okay. These are some chairs I found in an antique store. And I thought, oh, those would look great in Us. So I painted us on the front and back of the chairs. I got a little table from Mike, which was the little Swedish table that fit perfect. So I painted a design on that. Now, I did this for Husfest, so I was limited with time, where if I was doing this more for myself or possibly to enter, I would have included a little more details maybe on the legs of the table. And if you see on the legs of the chair, there's sort of a groove. I would have painted those maybe red and metallic gold. Okay. This also is a chair. It's modeled after one that had been a red chair, a gorgeous chair that was in Little Norway. And Larry Anderson made this chair. And what's different from the three-legged chairs, it has two legs in back with a backrest instead of just the one leg. And typical too in us chairs was putting a diamond border, the red and the black around the seat, painting every edge, even the legs, the center, the scrolls in the middle, and outlining those, the band around the seat, and also the little edge on the top is painted, okay? And this was the back, where again, every inch is painted. So it's a lot of painting. Okay.
All right, Nancy, we had a couple of questions in the chat, so I hope that you could answer those. The first one was asking about leaves. There seem to be so many different kinds of leaves in the Oos style. So how do you know which leaf to use in your design?
Well, you want to include, I feel you need to include that oval, kind of a watermelon looking leaf. But yet you want to vary things. You don't want everything all the same. So maybe doing leaves in different colors, different sizes, different shapes. Some are more teardroppy looking. The best thing I tell students is study the old things and get ideas from that. Look at those and see what they did.
And there was another question about the shade of white for the background. What is that shade?
Well, I don't know. Maybe it was a pure white back then that has aged a little. I've used pure white. I've used just a very, very slight off-white, but you don't want a real yellowy white. So, yeah.
Right. Well, I think I managed to either answer folks' questions in the chat or grab the ones that didn't get answered out of the chat. But if Andrew or Josh tell me otherwise, though, I think we have a few minutes here. So, here's another one. Let me just share that question with you. Where do you find your examples or inspirations for your Oos painting?
Well, I studied a lot. I have a book, which is a history book from the area of Norway, but the very center of it had a lot of about the painting. Some were just black and white and some color, and I studied that an awful lot. I've been to Norway twice in the Oos area and taking photographs, like I've been to Ulla Bull's house twice, and we always got to go to one room, which because of Turin, which is usually closed to the public, and the whole room is white. There's a border all the way around the ceiling and pieces in there. So a lot from the old, but yet Oos is very naturalistic. It doesn't always have to be connected by stems. It can just be clusters. So get ideas from wherever, even nature, and just paint in simple ways. And was a lot of times it looks so simple, but yet it's harder than it looks to paint.
Well, if anybody else has questions, feel to free to pop those into the chat. Or Josh, I don't know if you want folks to unmute themselves to ask questions, but I'll let you give that directive.
You know, I think we have a pretty big group today, so I'm going to ask that if you all have questions to just drop them here in the chat so that we don't talk over each other just because we have such a big group today. But if you do have a question, please drop it in the chat. We have a few minutes left. We might end a little early if we don't get questions, but I think there's some coming in here.
Yep, here's another one. It said, are there any colors in Oos that are off limits?
Well, I mean, you want to do your own thing, but yet I'm very traditional when I paint. So there are purpley colors, but it's basically the crimson. And it's more of a reddish crimson. So it can give, again, a very purplish look. Like I said, with judging, I would stay away from a pure orange. Use the cadmium red light by adding varying amounts of white, you get different shades. So I would say that pretty much is, yeah, you're pretty open. Other than cadmium yellow light, I do not use that for flowers. I always use the cadmium yellow deep for flowers. So adding white like to cadmium yellow light is it gets lost. It's very lemony. That I use mostly for greens.
All right, we also have a question about what shades of blue?
I use the phthalo blue, or in Rembrandt, it's the phthalo red blue. They have a phthalo red blue and a phthalo green blue. And I add a little bit of black to the phthalo. So it's more of a true blue, where Prussian has a lot of green in it. So you want a very blue, not green blue.
There's another one that just popped up here. It says, do we know who the artists were in all the pieces? Yes, I can. Most of them were, the historical pieces were either Midhus and then Tveit, and we could certainly send out a list to you afterwards. I could compile that for folks.
And Ananias Tveit was the best known of all the Oos painters, and that was that first trunk. Turin has an absolutely gorgeous trunk that he painted in her home, but of course, yeah, we don't have that. But he had many students, so it again carried on very true and pure.
Yeah, so we know a little bit about some of the pieces, the very small jewelry box-like pieces. We don't happen to have any artists known on those pieces, but several of them we do know or have a confirmed artist.
Who did that blue Tina, which is missing the handle?
Yeah, let me just have a quick look.
That
here.
looks very old.
Yeah, let's see. So the blue Tina, are you talking about the one that has kind of like a lid that might have been put on later?
Yeah, that one.
Okay, let me see. This one, I don't know that we have anybody listed for the artist. We don't know who the artist is. We haven't confirmed the artist for this piece, but perhaps some of you out there on the call or on the Zoom here might recognize the artist.
See a lot of outlining and details in Oos.
There's another question here. Do you try to fill all of the empty spots or spaces like you do in Telemark, Rosemaling?
Pretty much so. You want to have some space, so it balances. But yet, like I said before, with trunks, even the backside of trunks are painted, where often with other styles, we don't paint the back. The feet have details, every edge on the chairs. So there's a lot of painting in Us.
And one more here. Hjortis uses Prussian blue, so her leaves seem more toned down. So do you agree with that?
You can use either. I like the phthalo, but with Prussian, again, depending on your brand, Hjortis does also add some, I believe, black or brown to it to kind of tone it down too, so it isn't too green looking. You just don't want a lot of white and Prussian without adding anything and get real bright turquoise.
Yep, and thanks, Tina. Yes, so you can actually go online and you can do a lot of searching in Swedish and Norwegian antique dealers and the auctions online, and you can learn quite a bit about some of the painters there. I also direct folks to the Digital Museum, the sort of big digital catalog of Norwegian museum collections. There's often a lot of information there. I'll put the website or the link in the chat here for you. And we also have one question from Kathleen here. Are you painting with oil or are you painting in acrylics, Nancy?
I like oils. And the thing with Us, so much of it, you paint the circle and add strokes on top. So you need that paint to mix. It's much more beautiful than trying to contrive that same effect with acrylic, I believe. And to me, oils have a vibrancy that is hard to get with acrylics. Some of the colors you have to really layer up.
Nancy, we have a good mix of folks here today, some who have been Rosemaling for a long time and others who are very new to it. I'm wondering if you can say something about kind of how you got your start and what draws you to Us.
Well, with my Rosemaling, we were farming at the time when I started, and I saw some in a magazine, and I took a class at the tech school in Marshfield, central Wisconsin. And we had a bus trip down to Nordic Fest where I saw all the Rosemaling, and that's what started me into Rosemaling. And I started out with Rogalin, then went to Telemark and Valdres. And when Turin came to Vesterheim, that's when I got involved with Us. And I've taken her classes. I've been to Norway twice through Vesterheim with the classes, and I just loved Us because of the bright colors, the simplicity of it. Yeah, I just love it. I think it's bright and cheerful, just a wonderful, happy style.
There's another question here in the chat. Louise wants to know if you varnish a white background. She said that she's always afraid that it will yellow, and maybe you have some suggestions to share with the group.
Varnish is terrible. I have varnished it because it needs to be protected, but on white too, you have to be very careful. It picks up every little piece of lint or anything like that. And I have a hard time with acrylic varnishes over oils. They say you can do that now, but yet over time, when I was in school, you never put acrylic over oil. You could put oil over acrylics, so I've still kind of stuck with those guidelines. But it's getting harder and harder to find a varnish that is not a polyurethane or just a good varnish. So, yeah, I have possibly used some of the acrylic over it at times, but I'm just not sure how that's going to hold up over the years. So, yeah.
Well, I think maybe we have time. We'll do 1 to 2 more questions if anyone has one. And if not, we'll launch right into showing you some upcoming programs, and then we will wrap up our conversation.
Yeah, I see another question popped here into the chat. So is there a source of which pigments the Rosemaling used?
I mean, there's colors that I use. I use the cadmium red light, the cad yellow deep and cad yellow light, the phthalo black, pure black. I use the Venetian. And again, depending if I wanted a more muted, I use the yellow ochre sometimes. You just want a good quality of paint, like Rembrandt or Winsor Newton, not the student lines. The other thing, the crimson, I usually get a crimson lake, which is not as purpley as a alizarin crimson. It's a little more reddish, and I might add a little black to it just to tone it down, get it a little deeper. Yeah, I have a list of colors on my supply list. And again, the metallic gold is trim work.
Nancy, do you happen to know the sources for pigments for the historic pieces, since Oos is a little sometimes newer, or were any of those sources, newer or synthetic long ago? Do you have any sense of that?
I really don't know. What colors they had. I mean, it was around 1850 when this, started, basically. I mean, Oos is a part of Hordaland, and there might be some older examples that are similar to Oos, but yet the actual Oos from the Nils Midthus and on down the line has stayed pure again from that area because of him. Also, one thing I forgot to mention before, often you saw some of the Oos trunks in books on Swedish painting, and it is not Swedish, but yet possibly some of these went to Sweden, and that's why they've included it. Some of the Swedish painting might be similar to some of the Oos. Oos is very different from any other style.
I'll just slip in one more question here. Wondering if you ever wax a finished piece.
I have, not as often. Sometimes I don't like the way the finish is done. And I've even done where you give numerous coats of varnish and then lightly sand. Even if you use cream of tartar, it helps smooth out. So yeah, it just depends on how the finish comes out.